Okay, today's guest on the Cross Rip, depending on what you're watching in your spare time, is some combination of creator, writer, voice actor, and just to show off puppeteer. From Greg the Bunny to Robot Chicken to Dawn of the Croods, you've likely seen some of Dan's work. He even helped bring Mystery Science Theater 3000 back to television screens. He's also technically part of the Star Wars universe, but the main reason he is here today is to be grilled about all the Ghostbusters references in his current creation, Glitch Tech, and his love of Ghostbusters. Glitch Tech's now showing 2 seasons on Netflix. Dan Milano, thank you very much for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you for having me, guys. I have to tell you, that is the best and most thorough introduction I have ever gotten, because I've not been content to do any one thing for over 20 years, and it confuses so many people, but I'm proud I've gotten to play in so many different sandboxes, you know.
It's envious. That's the word I was looking for. It's late and words are not coming fast, but hopefully that's
all right.
That's not going to be a big problem tonight.
It's just nice to have a conduit for like all the bizarre personality quirks I had as a kid, and I found a way to make use of all my otherwise presumably useless knowledge, including how cyclotrons work, and I just turning every obsession I had as a kid and having a place to put it has been just an amazing thing I've never taken for granted. I'm so grateful to be able to work with people like yourselves, frankly, like just so many passionate people who've all grown up as part of the same culture, and we all kind of speak this like language that each other understands, and it's just been amazing. There's
a line for every circumstance.
Yeah.
There really is. There's a one-liner that you can just throw in there, or quip, or whatever you can in regular conversation. Well, I'll throw the first question in, if you don't mind, Chris, just because Dan, I always love, no matter what guest we have on the show, I always love to ask what your first Ghostbusters experience was. You know, you were a kid, you saw this movie for the first time, or was it the cartoon? Did you see real Ghostbusters for the first time? What was your introduction?
I'm in my 40s, so for me it was the movie, the first movie. I anticipated it for a long time because I was still pretty young when it came out, but my brother used to watch SNL, and I knew who like Aykroyd and Murray and Belushi were. And at the same time, I was a big sci-fi nerd, but I was a real scaredy cat. I was like afraid of horror movies. That I remember Gremlins was terrifying to me, and I remember being nervous about Ghostbusters, which was a great way to experience it, actually, like to truly feel both kind of some horror and comedy, because I was young enough that any anticipation was really scary to me. And I saw it at a drive-in theater in Suffolk County, New York, with my best friend Phil Altier, who I named a character after in Glitch Techs recently, and I accidentally went to get popcorn, and I closed the car door on his sister's ankle.
Oh!
And I never felt so terrible in all my life. I didn't know she was getting out behind me.
Oh, no.
And I was really apologetic, but I remember thinking the whole time, like, oh God, I hope we don't have to go home I hope we can still see the movie.
Can I get you ice? Are you okay?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so sorry. Second of all, we need to stay here. So I loved it. That was the first time I saw it. I was blown away by it. I was just a giddy kid. And there wasn't a lot of product for Ghostbusters other than like stickers. This is years before the cartoon. So the best I could do was eventually get my hands on the West End role-playing game, which was an amazing like imagination jumper for me. So the movie, which I saw a few times, and the role-playing game, that was my jam. And I think the novelization.
Yeah.
So you're out of the club, Troy, because Dan and I now share an almost identical introduction to the movie.
Did you slam the car door on my friend's leg as well?
Yeah, that's the weird part.
It's weirdest for her, I would imagine.
Some random Canadian in '84. Wham!
Did you saw it in the theater too?
I saw. I didn't see it in the drive-in. I'm actually jealous that because that a lot of my best childhood memories when it comes to movies are all around drive-ins.
Yeah.
This one I saw in an old theater in Calgary, Alberta. So it was pre-renovation, so it was a lot like getting to go see a movie in the old Chinese theater in LA, if that makes any sense, right? They were still painting like murals of Chaplin on the walls and stuff like that, and everything was sticky and you didn't want to touch it, but it was...
Yep. I worked in a theater like that in Northport, New York. It was like an old vaudeville theater they had turned into a one-screen theater, and... Yeah, I love those places. That
no
amount
of steam cleaning can bring those places back.
Yes,
but yes, exact same thing. The role-playing game was the next step. Remember playing that on the school bus with friends, and I think I've mentioned it here before. My brain absolutely exploded. I think it was it Scared Stiffs? Because part of the Scared Stiffs they wrote that at the convention the Ghostbusters were going to roll up and say hi, and I was just like, more Ghostbusters! And then of course the brush off, and I was like, oh, come on. But yeah. So.
Yeah, they came out with a couple of great modules that were like good jump starters, but being from Northport, Long Island, we created our own franchise. It was like, and we incorporated our hometown and all the home locations into our game. And it was just me and actually the same friend and his sister. We all played that game together. And that was the thing. It helped me understand what I loved so much. It wasn't just that it was funny, and it wasn't just that it was scary and spooky. And I was too young to know really that it was different, because I took those movies for granted. What it was to me was the accessibility. That, like, you had your fire department, your police department, and then you could have a local Ghostbusters franchise, because every town would need one, and that game was based on that premise.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I couldn't understand why, Sony was not developing that idea more. Now that I've been in the industry 20 years, I know that, like, things aren't just idea driven. There's like 1,000 production and marketing reasons why they probably chose not to do that. But to me, it seemed a really intuitive way to carry Ghostbusters on, was to say, it's not just about these 4 guys. It's about like you and you and you. And the fandom has clearly embraced that over the years.
Yes.
So yeah, it really unlocked my imagination in a great way, in a way that like Star Wars and stuff couldn't, because as much as I love that, I knew no matter how hard I tried, like I wasn't going to get a lightsaber, and that galaxy is literally far, far away, but Ghostbusters seems attainable. Like, I'd been to New York and I saw those locations, you could actually visit the firehouse, and eventually I learned that, Aykroyd even, based so much of it on semi-plausible, science and principles, and just the same way Star Trek used real aerospace, and just the fact that connection was there makes a kid go like, oh, maybe it's real, maybe if I got the right parts at Home Depot, I could build a proton pack or a DeLorean time machine, or,
The only real leap your tiny little minds need back then is that ghosts are real, which you're pretty much convinced of at that age anyways, as opposed to Wookiees are real, etc., which seems way more unlikely.
Yep, absolutely.
We've all been stuck in the basement when the lights went out or something like that. So ghosts are like right there as far as we're concerned.
Oh, it was the perfect age, and then to have a property that helped empower you against that, as opposed to become victimized by it, is huge for a kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And being a dork, I think that was it too, and it was also kind of saying, hey, if you're that slight weirdo who doesn't quite fit in, but you're detail obsessed and you're a little strange and you like strange things, like, this is the place for you. Like, we will take you. This is the team that you can be part of,
You're rewarded for being able to spell big words.
Yeah,
or
totally.
Just pronounce them. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess we'll try and merge this a bit back and forth. This all kind of came about because I have a little guy 8 who's really into glitch techs, and watching it, I was suddenly keenly aware how often you reference not just Ghostbusters, but so many other things as well.
Yeah.
I think in one single episode, you named a house after one of the Ghostbusters, crossroads after, like, cross intersection after 2 more Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
and I'm mostly convinced that you had one of the I want to call them Tamagotchis, but that's not it. The Tachikomas from Ghost in the Shell was referenced all in. It may not have even been the same episode. We tend to watch them in kind of like 2 or 3 arcs. So, but still, I'm like, that is a lot of various pop culture thrown in.
That rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper. And what was great about the premise of that show, which is essentially Ghostbusters except for tech support. You know, what if there was a technology that could manifest like voxels or pixels in 3D space, and they could, you know, form physically, and they could adapt pattern behaviors and other traits that were AI based. So kind of like the movie Pixels, but with a lot more lore, where we were saying, you know, well, what if Pac-Man could manifest, but, you know, his game code had him, you know, traveling that same maze path, although he doesn't know he's in a real life location and has an impact on this stuff is supposed to be like physical nanotech, so it actually does have a physical impact. So Pac-Man's doing his pattern, but he's doing it in the middle of Central Park, so he's going through trees and park benches and not trying to kill anyone, not trying to eat anyone. It's not like video game characters jump out and suddenly have personalities. He's just a force of nature. And then this tech team has to show up and deal with the problem in a very, you know, bag 'em, trap 'em kind of way. But video games are so rich in genre, and those genres stem to movies and other forms of culture. So it was very natural for us to adopt different styles, you know, not just video games, but so much of the culture that I and our entire creative team, who was, you know, aged from, you know, some of them like as young as 19 years old to, you know, people in their 50s and 60s, all bringing something to the table. And it was great because it was kind of organic. It didn't feel forced. We weren't just dropping lines or like winking at stuff out of left field. It was very organic to make it all part of the story, which I'm really proud of, because the one thing I really don't like is when pop culture stuff just, you know, tries to wink at us and throw in like really obvious stuff. You know, with our show, I hope that if you're watching as a family, if the kids don't get the reference, they're going to enjoy the story for what it is. But if you're their parent, then you may know what certain, you know, phrases mean or what certain shots are from and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I made it my mission to just pay homage so much to Ghostbusters, because it jump-started my imagination, and I learned so much about the movie industry through reading scripts when I was like 12 years old, and the first book on the making of the movie was an incredibly in-depth book that I was lucky enough to get. And so yeah, I kind of just feel so much of what I've been able to do came from that movie. So whenever possible, I would wedge in references.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, right out of the gate, in that very first episode, you can tell that you took everything that you loved about Ghostbusters and you instilled it directly into glitch techs. Like, there's a bust, like there's something wrong goes in the house, and, yeah. And this guy shows up with a particle thrower and a trap, and you know, it's, you watch it, and as a Ghostbusters fan, you go, hey, that guy's a fan. You know, yeah. That guy is a Ghostbusters fan.
Well, Eric Robles, who'd created a show called Fanboy and Chum Chum, he was developing projects at Nickelodeon for quite a while, and he and I met on a separate project we were adapting. And during that, he said, you know, I have this idea. He's like, are you a Ghostbusters fan? And I was like, and I explained, yeah, you know, I used to write sequels to Ghostbusters when I was supposed to be paying attention in junior high. And, you know, so he's like, well, I'm just, he was such a fan of the cartoon in particular. And he's like, I don't see that for kids. Like, since the Men in Black cartoon, there's no paranormal investigation. And so he was the one who thought to put video games and ghost busting essentially together. And then we were just friends at that point. So he was just like, wanted to know my basic impression of it. I said, well, let me read what you've got and I'll let you know. And I went home and I wrote him like a 12-page single-spaced info dump where I said, look, I've been dreaming of a project like this for so long, and these are just like free ideas. Just take them and run with them with my blessing, because I would love to see a show like this. And I went into all this detail about how it could work and again, all that stuff about how it should be like a chain. It should be international. It should, our story will be about one show, but one branch rather, but eventually we'll start to show there's, other branches in other towns and all across the world, etc. So his response to that email was, why don't we create this together? You seem pretty inspired. So I brought a ton of lore, and we did a lot of deconstruction, and we brought on a lot of amazing people who also deconstructed not just what we wanted to emulate, but why. Like, we talked a lot about, why do we love Ghostbusters? Why does it feel timeless? And part of that was putting a Marshmallow Man in the middle of, Manhattan in the early 80s, which was still like kind of that rundown, grimy, just that juxtaposition makes it real. So we had all these theories like, okay, the world has to be very normalized so that our supernatural stuff is bigger than life. The characters need to feel more grounded and realistic, not like, it's a very cartoony show, but the characters talk more like real kids than sort of obnoxious toon heroes. Because we want that contrast, I always loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer and how that was just about a kid in high school who suddenly has to fight vampires, but she's aware how ridiculous that is. So we thought, oh, these kids should constantly be pinching themselves that they're basically living in Ghostbusters, and they're getting to do things that normally exist only in movies and games. And so, that plus a lot of the other stuff we've been talking about were things that were really important to us. Because I wanted that same feeling. I dressed up as a Ghostbuster when I was 12, and it stole my imagination. And I just thought, I want some kid to watch this and feel like they could be a part of this world,
Yeah, they can work in tech support. Yeah.
Yeah, and to glorify things they already are pretty into. I mean, my 8-year-old can do tech support in Minecraft and Zoom and Roblox, like to a pretty extreme degree. And a lot of kids actually look up to Genius Bar workers and stuff. They see that as glamorous. So I thought, nerd culture also has to endure so many shows about geek or gamer culture where they succeed despite being social misfits, and I hate that. I hate it. So we really try to just glorify gaming in a way that wasn't too over the top, that was just reasonable. Nobody's like, wow, those little nerds really pulled it out and won the day. I hated that in Pixels. I thought that was like insulting. The movie almost seemed to have contempt for the people that it was appealing to. And I don't want to accuse that directly of the writers. I don't think it was their intent, but I think that's what that tone does. Everyone can like Big Bang Theory except the people it's about.
Right.
in a way.
Right. Yeah, it's insulting. But Dan Aykroyd had a great cameo in Pixels. It had that.
Yes, he did. I also liked his Casper cameo.
Yeah. Is it canon? That's the question we get very often. Is Casper canon? I
have a pitch, by the way, on how they could have made his cameo in 2016 Ghostbusters at least a little bit interesting.
Okay, we did an episode of this, so we need to hear yours.
Yeah.
All right, here's my pitch. He says his line. It's like everything in that movie is so forced. And I'm not actually anti that movie, but I used to work for Sony, and I can tell you that movie was a Sony marketing problem. That movie just had so many editors. God knows how it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But they have Aykroyd, and he's like, hey, ladies, where you want to go, whatever. And all I would have needed as an audience member is that when they pan down, the thing on the back, like the taxi ID, says race dance. Because if I want to know, oh shoot, this is an alternate timeline. Like, I didn't like Bill Murray's character. I thought, oh, it would have been interesting if, very subtly you realized something happened where, this is like a sort of like the way Abrams did in the original Star Trek. It's like a sort of a parallel world where something happened, because that could potentially be a story. Yeah. And rather than just have it be, cabbie number 6 just happens to be played by the same actor. You know what I mean? I thought that would have been interesting.
I like that. I like that sense that it could be, there was I always come back to it, a sliding doors moment somewhere in time where all those guys never ended up coming together, and lo and behold, you can't stop the Ghostbusters. It's going to happen. Yeah,
this thing that was somehow meant to be.
Except technically for Egon, who, because of the statue,
right,
still went into academia.
Still,
and if that thing, and again, this stuff shouldn't be too obvious. This should be the kind of thing that we catch on the DVD, because the core audience wouldn't understand. But if we went back and looked, and at the bottom of that bust it says Dr. Spengler of that university, we'd been like, well, what happened? What happened?
Yeah.
And even if they just did it in an IDW comic, they could have maybe told us that story or something,
Still may one day, I guess. Never say never on that one.
Yeah, those comics are done really well. We had Eric Burnham come visit us at our production when we were doing Glitch Techs, and nice. I desperately want to work with him. Like I had wanted him to possibly do an episode of Glitch, but we didn't get to develop our new episodes in time to work with him, but we may still.
So what you're saying is you've seen Eric not in a coffee shop in front of his laptop, is what you're saying. Okay.
He stopped at a coffee shop up the street, and we did have a coffee shop in the lobby where you could get a little work done. But yeah, I've seen him actually walk the halls.
Amazing. I guess this is a good natural point to ask about. So I kind of have some vague recollection that because of just general scheduling weirdness, and then the world that 2020 has been, Glitch Tech season or series 2 dropped on us earlier or later than intended. I can't quite remember.
Oh, it's always been a little rocky because the industry's just been changing so fast with the advent of streaming, and then the pandemic quadrupled that because it made all the companies hemorrhage money and panic and all that. But Nickelodeon is owned by Viacom, which went through so many regime changes while we were there. And in that shuffle, if we were ever going to be on their network, we got sold to Netflix. And it actually happened pretty quickly. We were not a show that was shelved. We were actually still finishing post when the show we were told we were going to be going to Netflix. Right. And so we had produced 20 episodes, and then we had started work on scripts and storyboards for a second season, and we were doing the first 10 episodes of Nickelodeon season 2, right? But when you go to Netflix, they do this thing where they'll take about half your order and put it out and call that season 1 so that they can stagger releases.
You had what you considered a full first season, and they kind of cut it in half.
Yeah.
In how they present it on that. That's right.
It confuses people, but it's not really that terrible, because what it does is kind of give you 2 premieres, and it lets an audience build in a way that's pretty good. But it is like a headache to understand. Yeah. So, the first 10 shows aired pretty much in the order they were intended. We shuffled a couple things around in February, and then August is when they dropped the second batch of 10. So they called that season 2, but technically that is the 20 episodes of season 1 that Nick originally produced. And then while we were producing season 2, they froze our production in early 2019, literally like January 1st. And that was because, it was the first quarter of a new year, and the new regime that had took over at the end of 2018 just was putting an all stop on a lot of shows, actually. I'll never know the clear agenda. I know it was financial, but I don't think that was specific to us. I think they were trying to make their books look really good, and they were just putting a pause on anything that they didn't know. And so many people that developed our show had left by the time this rolled around. So there was nobody there but us to tell them what the show was. In previous regime changes, we had some amazing executives who would like educate each regime on what the show is and why it had momentum and why everybody was so excited. Not just the premise, but like there's a lot of social value in the show. The animation is, we're so lucky, it's phenomenal. We got to do animation that Nick had never done before. But, you know, a lot of times they just sort of clear the decks, and that's what happened to us. So that third season, that would be, I guess, what Netflix would call it, is sort of up in the air. We have unfinished episodes that we want to finish, and I don't know if we're going to get to do it sooner or later. But if they haven't greenlit us by now, then it's going to be the slower path, I think. It could still happen. The problem is right now that there is no time frame anymore.
Yeah.
It's streaming. So they could try to pick us up in 2 years if they want. Or another network could come in. Or someone will buy Viacom and then they'll own it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's nuts. So you just got to, when you're a content creator, you kind of have to just hang on. These are just like choppy seas. The part that's really heartbreaking is that the team was amazing. And now we're not scattered to the wind, but we're obviously on separate productions, and it'll be that much harder to rebuild.
Right. Yeah.
But it's been done. You know, we're all really close, and we would find a way if we had to do it. In the meantime, we're going on our other projects. But I do take it as a win that we got these 20 episodes produced at all, because so many shows don't survive development, let alone production, let alone 20 episodes of a show that was not based on a book or, a pre-existing IP of any kind. Right. That looks gorgeous. Like, one of our dreams was for it to look as good as real Ghostbusters did, especially when they were done, in Japan, and they were genuine anime show. We wanted it to look like the opening of Thundercats. Because when we were kids on Saturday morning, like the opening of the show was always amazing, and then the actual show was like farmed out.
All the stock animation,
yeah. So we were like, man, could we make a show that looks consistently good? And we were able to do it, so we're just psyched. I mean, we got away with murder from a creator standpoint. I cannot believe we got to make the show we made.
And it's to the benefit, being on Netflix there, that it's there waiting for every child that didn't catch it when it first dropped to have that bored, rainy Sunday to turn it on and then catch up with everybody else on it too. So the audience can only grow and grow and grow.
Exactly. It's amazing to, if it was on Nickelodeon only, we would have had to have you tune in at a specific time, and who does that anymore? And they could have pulled us after 2 weeks, but now for quite a long time, people are going to be able to just go and discover it, and, spread the word about it. And we really are proud that we think we made something for families that has good sci-fi and characters and stuff adults can enjoy, and really,
I, like you, can measure these things based on our willingness to sit and watch them with our children. And Glitch Tex easily not only passes the sit down and watch with them test, but slightly annoyed at them when they run ahead on episodes when you're not there. And is also rewatchable. So
ultimate compliment.
Yes.
Thank you.
And mission accomplished. I don't want to throw poor Thomas under the bus here, but mission accomplished in him wanting to dress up like one of the techs for Halloween.
That's right.
Oh, yes. Dude. There's a guy named AJ Locascio, who's an actor, and he also just he created a short called Spooky Fresh. He's the voice of Prince Lotor on Voltron. He does Marty McFly and all the like Back to the Future games and stuff. We were on Dawn of the Croods together. He made a 1-to-1 scale gauntlet, and he released the plans online, and he refined them and then reposted, because he's just that kind of detail freak. Right. And I noticed too that some people made like incredible homemade costumes this year, and that does make me want to like cry, because I did strap a vacuum cleaner to my back, and I did turn my grandfather's car into an ectomobile with like cardboard cutouts and decals, and he wanted to murder me. But to see people embrace it to that level is incredible. I still dress up as a Ghostbuster like pretty much every year, and I have for like over a decade.
You say that like that's like a weird thing.
I was gonna say, so do we. You're in good company. You're fine.
Yeah, man. There's nothing better than going on patrol, and you know how much people love it, and it is. It's like I don't want to like belittle what firemen do, especially I'm in California, and they are like such heroes here. But it is that same kind of magic. You're just like, oh, here's somebody who's like here for the public, and it's fun, and we've got our own theme song, and we bring flashing lights, and we bring the party, and it's an incredible infectious feeling. I'm just so proud of it. And I've always been a huge fan of Dan Aykroyd because I love his mind and how he thinks too big. I worked with Eugene Levy on Greg the Bunny, and I knew he was in Ghostbusters 2, but got cut out. And I asked him all about it. He was like, how'd you know about that? And I was like, I used to read it Premiere Magazine. You were going to be Cousin Sherman. And he's like, yeah, I did about a day and a half, and I guess it wasn't that good. And I said, what are those guys like? And he's like, Dan Aykroyd is a brilliant man, but without Harold, and he wasn't trying to slam him. He just meant that guy's unproducible. That guy's like pie in the sky. And Eric Robles always likes to say, you need a Walt Disney and you need a Roy Disney. You need the how and the why. Like somebody says, why not do this, do that? Somebody has to say how. So Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis were really good for someone like Aykroyd. And I see that a lot in creative teams and relationships. And I was fascinated. I actually wrote to him when I was like 13, and I got a reply.
Wow. What did it say? What happened?
Well, I'm actually really proud of myself because people used to send fan letters to agencies and studios. But I lived in Long Island, and I knew that he had become, I read an article that he became partners in the Hard Rock Cafe. This is before even they built Planet Hollywood up the street. So I sent a letter to the Hard Rock Cafe. And then 2.5 years later, I got a letter. And he said, the guys in the kitchen held this letter for me until I came in. And he's like, it was so nice of you to write to me, and he sent me a picture from, I think it was 1988 by then, and he did that movie, The Couch Trip, with Walter Matthau. He did a lot of weird movies like post Ghostbusters 2. And he signed it, and he said, stay sane. And he just wrote, keep writing. I love that you want to be a writer. It was just awesome. I just couldn't believe that he actually got it and replied. And
it's framed somewhere in Perspex in your house, I'm assuming.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I always wished it was a still from Ghostbusters, but I still cherish it so much.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
You have guests come over and they're like, "You're a really big fan of Dr. Detroit?" Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, my stepmother is an alien posters everywhere.
Loose cannons. What's this
Loose
all about, Dan?
cannons, dude. That was a tough one. But I saw them all. I saw Nothing But Trouble opening night in Times Square. And I actually love that movie, but maybe for the wrong reasons. I love what it tried to do.
Yes.
Because again, there's I guess a great example of what happens without the Ramis factor, you know. But I love
Yeah.
that guy's mind. And actually, there's a great article on it online where apparently everyone in the crew said that he was amazing to work for and a really nice guy because he indulged everybody's creativity, you know. So that's nice to know.
Who's next question here, Troy?
Oh, go for it. Yeah, go ahead.
We kind of covered, where are we at here? Because Dan's kind of covered stuff I already talked about here. I mean, I can go to the side stuff.
Yeah, go to the side stuff.
All right, so
yeah.
So step one is I referenced that you were technically in the Star Wars universe. You distributed you did the rhubarb in a
little bit of
whatever,
Walla. Yeah,
the Walla Walla. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask you if you ever put any thought into exactly who you are in those crowd scenes, and if you wanted to share it here, because if you say it here, there is a small chance that somebody may then add it to Wikipedia. And then you're enshrined forever.
Well, for Wikipedia, I can give them the following. I was a quest giver in Knights of the Old Republic, but I don't remember exactly who. I know it was a light side quest, but it was something stupid. I was a guy who probably was named like Snowy Toboggan, and I sent you off to get 5 brazel bushes. It's the worst quest you could want to do. Bring me back 5 berries from a brazel bush. For my Wookiee pie. Just something terrible. But in Star Wars Squadrons, I'm part of a Walla group that's doing stuff like on the flight deck, and everyone in the Walla group needed to do you can't speak in English, you have to do gibberish. Right. And they wanted me to command a squad. So I did an Arlie Ermy nonsense voice where he's just like, "You say I don't understand it? What say how high? You say how high," right, and stuff like that. "What is your measure about?" Right, and they just were cracking up. Unfortunately, I can't lose it, but I'd like to think that I'm a droid named Ermy RL or or just an alien named like Arl Ermy.
Yeah.
And I actually, in Star Wars Detours, which is not yet released, but I think may come around eventually, I play Rada the Hutt as a teenager.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's done as kind of Napoleon Dynamite. So he's just like, "Oh, Dad, not in front of the scum and villainy, Dad." And I played Darth Maul, but he sounds a bit like Matthew McConaughey. So he's sort of like, once you've looked inside yourself and literally seen yourself split in two, you start to think, I got to reevaluate my life choices. And I'm Dexter Jetster. That was the biggest part, because part of the show took place in Dexter's Diner, because I think that's what we all want when we think Star Wars.
Yeah.
Is more Dexter. But we actually did some great stuff. It was the premise of that show was visiting different set pieces in the universe. The comings and goings at the diner, the Jabba's palace, and the Death Star while it was under construction. And some amazing writers contributed to that, and there are about 30 finished completed episodes that came out really good.
I was going to say it was close to being finished and released, and then it just sort of got shelved at the last minute. Yeah. Yeah,
and we would go up to the actual ranch for a week at a time. So you'd stay there. You'd stay at the inn. It was summer camp, and then you'd work all week, and then you'd leave as a writer. Then the animators at Big Rock Ranch would work with the producer and directors for a couple months, and then you go back up for another week or two to write. And I did that about 4 times, and it was magic.
Wow.
It was just magic. We got to sit on the porch of the Victorian house, and he was around. Seth Green had gotten to know him and his family for years, to the point that he really trusts Seth, and they have a very sweet relationship. So that extended to us slobs, who were all on our best behavior and really tried hard to let George know that like we were fans, but we weren't going to put him on the spot. At least the first couple weeks. And then once it was pretty chill, then we started to like hit him up with trivia and kind of found that he didn't know half the answers. Like he didn't read the RPG books like we did.
Yeah.
You know, like I started to really get a humanized picture of him as just this guy who built this juggernaut. And the truth is, I think he could never possibly see Star Wars the way fans see it, nor could we ever see it how he does. Like he looks at Star Wars and he sees his unfinished like college senior thesis film, you know, like
right.
No wonder he wants to take all the scratches and things out. You know, it's not there's when he looks at it, he sees all these compromises we made.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that we love. You know, like, oh, we
right.
love how lived in it is. And he's sort of like, well, it wasn't supposed to look like it, you know.
Why did I shoot that in black and white 16 millimeter? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and so...
Yeah.
He's endlessly upset about the stormtrooper walking into the door, and we love it forever and ever.
Yeah, so. Exactly. We don't want a thing changed. And I think he could understand that if somebody tried to change... you know, The Seventh Samurai or a film he grew up with, but
right.
It just didn't compute for him.
Yeah.
So that was very human to me. Anyway, I went off on a tangent, but I had to because it's Lucas,
I was wondering what happened
man.
to Detours. I'm so glad you, because that was one of those we saw the trailer for, and I was super excited for it, and then it vanished, and you're like, oh man.
You could probably tell from the trailer that it's weird. It's an odd duck. It's a real mixed tone. I can guarantee you that the writing is very smart and funny in a lot of places. It's not like an embarrassment, but it is a really mixed tone. Like people wanted it to be 10 different things. You know, some people wanted it really broad. Some people wanted it to be more like Venture Brothers. And sometimes it is all those things. So I think if they go back and they cherry pick some of the best stuff and whittle it down a bit, they could probably package some great episodes.
Well, and maybe it'll help, like with Lower Decks coming out. They can see like, look, these things can coexist, and it doesn't affect the big, you know, hour drama that you have on your service at the moment. If you have this 22-minute comedy and it is referential and it does call out all of these things, and it is kind of a weird.
Yeah.
It's playing to the people who have read the RPGs and will know those references, and yeah, that would be cool.
I hope so. I know Filoni and Favreau both really love it, and they've got a lot of sway now, so they'll do what they can to bring it out. So, but yeah, so I've gotten to play in a lot of sandboxes, and I always wanted to work at Sony. I used to write features as like kind of an assignment writer where you just get assigned, you know, one script or another. I did have one original script for a while with Laura Ziskin, who was doing like Spider-Man 2 at the time. And I only mention that because, you know, I got to know a lot about life at the Sony lot. And this is before they redid the offices for you know, Paul Feig and now for Ghost Corps. But back in 2005-06, I want to say, you could just walk the lot and there was no Ghostbusters stuff, except one day the hearse was there, or the ambulance rather, the original. And I knew it was the original because it was so rusted out. And I thought, oh my God, it was like parked, and it was not on display. It was parked way behind another building. So I was early to a meeting, and I walked up to it, and I tried the door, and it opened. And I just sat down inside of it, and it stank and everything. And I just sat there, and eventually a security guard came around, and he's like, you know, you can't be in there. And all I had was a flip phone at the time, but I took it out and I said, yeah, but you know you got to take a picture of me in it. And he did.
That's a good guard. That is a good guard. He was
so nice. Yeah. I was like, you got to. And that's the one they ended up refurbishing. So up until that point, that was like my greatest dream come true, that I got to sit in the Actimobile, you know.
Pre-refurbishment too, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And I told Laura Ziskin all about it. I'm like, I almost got kicked off the lot. And she just looked at me like I was an idiot. She was a nice lady, but apparently Bill Murray threw her in a lake during the production of What About Bob? Because,
Sounds
there's always
right.
those crazy stories where he would pick women up and play with them. But she was the producer on that movie, so she was pissed as hell. So whenever I talked about Bill Murray or Ghostbusters, she just quickly changed the subject. She was...
Do we want to ask Dan about his hopes and dreams for Afterlife?
That's what I was going to say, because the only thing I have left on my list are Afterlife, and I want to ask you about Short Circuit. I'm going to put you on the spot, but let's talk Afterlife first.
I have a Ghostbuster story for that too.
Okay.
Well, yeah, here's what I love about Afterlife. My feeling is, as much as I love Ghostbusters and wanted to write sequels, like I never really felt there was more of a story to tell, at least not about the core guys, because they were getting older, and it's hard. I have a lot of respect for people now who have to carry on franchises, because it is really difficult. And even if you have a great idea, believe me, corporate is going to poke 1,000 holes in it.
Yeah.
And I read the Stupinski draft that I found online that those guys had written, which was pretty good. They fight Cthulhu. I was like, oh my God, I wish they made this. But they're all a bit of a stretch. It's hard to continue the story. I didn't think that the 2016 idea was so bad. I just wish it didn't have to be a total reboot. I wish it was more a handoff, or a parallel story or whatever. So anyway, all I know about Afterlife is if they're going to do something else, I think it's actually like kind of really sweet that, Jason Reitman thought, I've loved this thing. Like, I'm a genuine fan. And my dad got a raw deal on that last movie, and I think I can step in and do something about it. And I love how they did it on the down low. The vibe seems right. And then, sadly, Harold Ramis has passed. But the fact that they might incorporate and use that to tell a story, I think, is really potentially interesting. And if they can do a contemporary handoff that's like does something new with the franchise, then I'm down. Because like anybody else, like we all want to taste a McDonald's hamburger and have that same flavor. But it's hard with movies because you do, but after the first bite, you almost resent it. Like you want something different too. That's why I thought episode 7, even though it skipped a lot of information when it began, I was like, that was a pretty good balance for a while. It was a good start, and I hope that this just tells a really fun story. I like that they want to legitimize what happened in the original film and kind of ground it in reality. Like this was a thing that happened in New York that people don't talk about so much anymore or whatever. I think that's really cool. So I have high hopes. And I'm just a softie. So in a way, I just kind of like the father-son aspect of it. And I'm going to go in pretty open-hearted and just, want to have a good time. So I think it has a lot of good vibes for it. I'm really upset that they're not releasing it in lockdown because I need that movie so bad.
I was going to say, it would be fitting if it was released in a drive-in right now, so you could go see that, and it would be a great bookend between...
Yes. So I think it's going to be. I'm always a little cautious, but I'm not going in, as a harsh judge. I just want to have some fun, and I want to see kids opened up to that world because I think they can be. I do think Ghostbusters is really ripe to explore.
And there's can't think of much better than maybe another decade of a movie here and there with Paul Rudd in the mix. So.
I've loved him for so long. He's I remember the very first Wet Hot American Summer. He's so funny. It's of all the people who eke their way into different movies, I'm down for him being in there. I love that he's seemingly not a huge main character either. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
and nobody's really talked to him yet, but I get the impression from a couple of, because he's allowed to do a lot of improv in his movies, and a couple of times Ghostbusters has come up in some of the jokes that I'm wondering if he might not be a bit of a big fan himself too, and it's leaking through here and there, and now he gets to actually be in it. So
it is cool, and I feel like they're doing a thing where he's kind of playing us. He's the guy who gets to hold the ghost trap and say, "Don't you know what this is?" Like that.
Yeah.
That's me talking to my kid. So yeah, it's really sweet, but we'll see. I'm a fan of all Paul Feig's movies. I don't think enough people have seen his show Other Space because it got buried on
it's so good.
Oh man, it's so great. So I had such high hopes for that movie, but you can see that they just threw everything in the kitchen sink into the edit, and I don't know how strong the script was from the get. It didn't seem like it was all that strong, but even so, we'll probably never know what that movie was even supposed to be, because it seemed like there were threads of stories and relationships, and they just got mishmashed. And it happens. It just Sony in particular is very much driven by like the marketing and trailer department.
If nothing else, I think it's the project that cracked the seal on us getting more Ghostbusters stuff finally, just because leading up to it, everybody did a lot of, it needs to be this, no, it needs to be this. Well, they'll kill us if we don't do that. Well, they'll kill us if we do that. And so it was attempted. It came out, found a bunch of new fans, and with the seal broken, now everybody's like, great. Now let's move on to a whole bunch of other stuff. Like it's, I don't know, not the what's the. No, nobody want to put their foot forward first, and now that they have,
and that's why it's so great that it came from Reitman's camp, and it came almost kind of like covert. Like it couldn't get notes because they already had a draft. You know what I mean? Like they knew what they were doing. That was a real smart way to play it. Yeah.
Do you want to grill them on Short Circuit?
Short Circuit.
We're running short on time, Dan, and I've got you. So I am a huge fan of both the original and the second movie. I love that second movie. What's going on with your Short Circuit? That's one I've been anticipating and wanting to see for quite some time. What's going on?
I don't know what's going to happen. When you're a career screenwriter, it's so hard, which is why I stopped doing it. I was like, I'm going to do TV because you get to work with a lot more people, and whether things go or not, they move more quickly. Film is very solitary. If you're the sole writer, and you just go months between meetings and everything. But I had a really fun take. It was just kind of a soft reboot, but I wrote roles for the entire original cast, and I worked very closely with the original producer, David Foster. He took me to the Sony archives. I got to touch and meet Johnny Five, and they also had a lot of Ghostbusters stuff there. But I got the job by pitching to, thankfully not, what's his name at New Line? Oh God, why am I blanking on his name? He's like the horrible sex offender.
Weinstein.
Yeah, it was not Harvey. It was Bob. It was his brother Bob I met with. And before the meeting, it was around the corner from the Hook and Ladder firehouse. So I sat on the steps of the Hook and Ladder practicing my pitch before that meeting, which was like good mojo. And he really dug it. He really liked the story. It was more of like a kid and his robot story. It was like a little bit of an Iron Giant in a way. And he was like, Johnny Five was more plugged into the internet than just television. And so the script is very dated at this point, I think, from a lot of the memes. It was like very Chocolate Rain era. And I know Tim Blaney, who did the voice, and I absolutely wrote it for Tim, and I named the president, not the president, God, the principal in the movie was like Mr. Blaney. And what happened was they went ahead, they had 2 directors, and then suddenly they took so long, the license ran out. Like New Line lost the license, and it went back to Sony. So now it's at Sony. David Foster and his people really liked my script, and they wanted to move forward with it. They started looking for other directors. But I don't know. Sometimes it even has to do with other properties. Like maybe when Ghostbusters didn't go, they stopped their other properties. Or it could have had something to do with like RoboCop coming out and people having decisions about that,
Yeah.
When something enters the zeitgeist, everybody starts micromanaging. So I know that there has not been a new script and I've personally not heard of anything else happening with the property. It's just kind of sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would love to see it made. I was really proud of how the script came out, and I was honored that I got to do. That was like my first actual sort of franchise job, like on a property. Everything else was like really small, new projects.
Well, it's hopefully somebody sees it sitting on a desk when they all go back to the Sony lot or the New Line lot, wherever it ends up at, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we got to get back to Dan. I can't believe we didn't do that. And it'll be one of those things where you get the call the next day.
I hope so. In the meantime, I'll have to just send a copy of the script or something, because eventually that stuff just gets out there.
Yeah, or just do the Adam Goldberg thing and start posting concept art on your Twitter account, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, check that out! That's what this would be."
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think if they did it, they would probably really reinvent Johnny Five. But I tried really hard to make him basically the same exact robot, except a little more ergonomic, because I just think he's one of the most brilliant puppets I've ever seen. And even if they do a CG model, I just feel like he's like R2-D2 or C-3PO. Like, I just don't think you can upgrade him, but I would hate to see him completely overhauled.
Yeah, the expressiveness in the eyes and all of the things that you want to see in him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think even kids who haven't seen the original, like, he's just a really, relatable character. So, that's my hope.
He's almost the perfect subject for movies these days, effects-wise, just because being not organic, there's no reason not to make the puppet for the actors to interact with most of the time. But also because he's not organic, when you do have to render him in CG, he will be flawless.
You can replace him pretty easily.
Yeah.
And you'll never be able to tell him from the puppet, really. So
I had him taking off on jets and flying around and doing some stuff that would have been much more difficult before. But in writing the scenes, I really just imagined the 80s version, because I love that thing. I love the treads. I love that you could climb up on him like in the second movie, and somebody could hold on and kind of ride him. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
So I had him controlling a lot of different technology. He goes to a tech expo, and all these robots and drones and things are coming to life and stuff. It was fun.
Nice.
Well, he could pair with things.
Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see that movie. Well, I know we're running short on time with you, Dan. I promised to keep you under an hour, but Chris, do you have anything else for him while we've got him?
One thing, it's one Thomas made me put to you, Dan. He says he has spotted your. It's completely not an in joke. I get it, but he has decided it's there. He's decided that Carrie, the babysitter in Incredibles, who happens to bear a resemblance to the bad guy doctor in Abominable, red hair, ponytail, is also the girl at the ice cream drive-through in Glitch Tech, just
so
at different
funny.
ages of her life. So he wanted me to pass that along. That he got the joke and he's on to you.
That's hysterical. Everyone has concluded that Miko's father on Glitch Tex is also Nickelodeon's Doug, grown up. And it's funny. Some of those things I'm conscious of, and some of them I'm not, because we have so many people giving input that some stuff even slid past me. Like, we've got poses in the show that are from Kamen Rider and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I had to go sometimes and check with certain board artists and is that what you were doing? And they're like, oh yeah. Most of it I knew, but it's something that I love about the show is what we were talking about, that those things are there, but they're subtle. So even I can go and learn about that and think that's awesome, and find out there are new Easter eggs all the time.
Once Thomas was introduced to the concept of the Stan Lee cameo, he now looks for cameos for everybody in everything. So I'm sure as he gets older, he'll start to kind of dial that in a bit. But
Man, we almost did an episode where the Glitch Techs end up in what seems like a paranormal situation, and we were going to have a ghost hunter team. This is just more of a season 3 idea, is the only reason we didn't do it, because people are still kind of understanding our concept. But once you know what glitch teching is, then you know what it's not. So to have the glitch techs run into a Ghost Hunters type team would have been really interesting. And we got a premise written, and we were going to try to unite Dave Coulier and Phil Lamar, and
Wow.
and we were pretty close. We got as far as like casting, looking into it, and saying like, oh yeah, they'll all do it. It looked like we were even going to get Arsenio Hall. And then the worst thing is like the story just wasn't coming together, and we had to change it, and we did a different story. But we're always looking for ways that we could do it. I did my best attempt at a Slimer voice with Kadama, this little creature we had, where I just gave him that like Frank Welker, like he did every mascot in every 80s cartoon, from Glomer and oh god, there's so many. But we really wanted a Slimer factor in the show, so we were gonna try to work that in more.
Nice. Well,
yeah, I was going to say that's all the time we have with you, Dan. But man, thank you so much for coming by. And once you hear more about when those episodes of Glitch Text is going to hit, please come back and we can talk about those, or just let us know so we can blast them, because I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are fans of the show, so we got to keep them posted too.
Thanks so much. Please tell friends, anybody who will listen, to check out the show on Netflix. We're going to be on there for quite a while. You can reach me at Dan Milano. For now, in lockdown, my DMs have been open, and I've been trying to answer everybody who writes. If you follow me on Twitter, we've published a lot of show material, including designs and scripts, and there is a document on all the Ghostbusters references in the show. And I'm working now on adapting a book series called Wings of Fire with my wife, Krista Starr, and with Ava DuVernay producing. That's going to be for Warner Brothers. And lastly, Ghostbusters Year One is finally coming out as a trade paperback, and I had written a foreword for that quite some time ago, which Eric was nice to have me do. And Dan actually Dan Schoening put me in a crowd shot in the comic a while back, which just goes to show, like, man, when geeks meet up and just share interests, it's fun to overlap. And I really love that we have the online community for that. I mean, I met Eric Burnham in a chat forum for the Ghostbusters board game. It's not like we went to some Hollywood party, because those don't really exist. And
No.
if they do, I'm not invited. So we just met nerding out about, board game minis. So anyway, look for that. Year One is a pretty fun precursor story, and it's a ramp up in a way for Aftermath, or Afterlife. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, we love those one shots. Those were great.
Those guys kill it. They have kept it alive in such a great way, and they've expanded what is a pretty small universe when you think about it. And they've taken every like background character, and it's not like squeezing blood from a stone. They've actually come up with really rich ideas.
Yeah.
They took the Jennifer Runyon character from the opening scene in Ghostbusters and like made her a cool character who has actual psychic powers, which is brilliant. And they're just fun. You can tell they love it.
Every once in a while, they do something, and you're like, "Oh no, this is it! They're gonna jump the shark and meet up with the turtles, or their cartoon selves." And then you're like, "Oh no, that actually worked really, really
well." Pull it
well."
off every time.
Passion always wins out. That's how I feel about a show like Cobra Kai. I mean, that show works because they really loved it and cared about the material, and they leaned into the things that were kind of, awkward about it, and they made that part of their story. And so that's the feeling I get about Afterlife. I feel like it's leaning into a lot of stuff, including the loss of Ramus and the generational torch pass. And so I think it's going to be good vibes. And anyway, I'm just proud to be with other ghost heads, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I don't get to talk about my love of it that much.
No, all the things you mentioned are coming from a great place, and all of your work comes from a great place too. So we're thrilled to have you on the show, and thanks for stopping by, Dan.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to it.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care, guys.